Welcome to Cobras and Fire. My name is Bakko, and today I am joined by Darren. I'm going to give a crack at this. Darren Paltrowitz. Did I get that right?
No, but I mean it's close. It's close. Just think Gwyneth Paltrow and then throw an "it's" at the end. So Paltrowitz, and there you
Paltrowitz.
go. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
I mean somebody's got to do it, but
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to connect. I like your work. It's not everyone that can rank Kiss albums in order and not be angry over doing that.
Oh, yeah. So you're familiar with some of that nonsense?
Oh, you say nonsense. I say fodder. Good.
Okay, fair
fodder.
enough. Fodder, yeah. I think they're almost synonyms, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, it's along the lines of when somebody calls themselves old. I like to correct it to go, no, you're classic, or you're vintage, or you're experience. Semantics, you know?
This has come up on our show a couple times. This is a way to call somebody old while kind of backhand complimenting them. Call them spry. You never say somebody's spry, if they're 15. If you're a spry 15-year-old, things are not going good. But so
we are on the same page here. If you say advanced, that's also kind of a slap in the face. But vintage, classic, those things don't go out of style.
Well, we're going to talk about David Lee Roth quite a bit today. But are you a Kiss fan? I'm
a big self-loathing Kiss fan.
Nice. Yeah. Well, welcome to the club. It's good to meet another member, I should say.
Yeah, I've the pleasure of interviewing 3 of the 4 originals and some of the other satellite members, and the more I learn about Kiss, the more I like about Kiss. And it's the opposite with a lot of bands. Sometimes when you learn how bands work, you hate them eventually, and I like Kiss more the more that I learn about how things work in that organization.
Fair enough. I think over the year, because I started as a child, my super fandom ended about maybe in the mid-30s, and it's just gotten worse. Now, the music I still have a connection to, and I love talking about them. I love the story of them, so that it's still fun. I just don't really, I don't know. I think they're kind of not the best people, but what did you think about the Avatar announcement?
It is exactly what you'd expect from Gene and Paul. I really thought it was going to be, I had some text threads going on during that final show where I thought the big announcement was going to be almost like a community theater production kind of thing where anyone could license it. So you were going to simultaneously have 20 Kiss shows going on at any time. That's what I thought that was going to happen. This is obviously a higher end thing based on ABBA, using the ABBA team. It's not for me, but I think that they're using Star Wars as more of a guideline than any other band. So it's very interesting when you have a band trying to be a brand. And they are leading. They are leaders, for better and for worse. And if you look at their legacy management versus, say, Van Halen, I'll take what Kiss is doing any day over what Van Halen has been doing.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's get into it. I'm, of course, talking to Darren Paltrowitz. Did I get it? All right. Author of the DLR book, How David Lee Roth Changed the World. This is out on Backbeat Books. I assume you can find it everywhere, right? It's out now, or is it coming out?
It is out, VanHalenStore.com, Amazon, Target, Walmart, all the European places where you'd buy books, all the Australian places. It's out and about.
Okay. Before we get into the book, there's some kind of recent news I'd like to pick your brain on a little bit, at least get your opinion. The Roth show, This Fucking Kid. I assume someone who wrote the book probably is aware of what I'm talking about. Do you know what it is? Okay. What did you think?
It's very historically inaccurate. Dave likes to, and you'll stop me if I'm being too long-winded or getting off topic here, but Dave likes to say in interviews that he remembers everything. And then he gives some crap story from when he's a kid about how he worked as an orderly in a hospital. And this military person said, you have to remember everything. And Dave does not remember things correctly. So I'll just give you one example. He's going like, New York City, Jones Beach. I live about 5 miles from Jones Beach. Jones Beach is not in New York City. I don't live in New York City.
Okay.
I live in a suburb that's 25, 30 miles outside of New York City. So as a private investigator, you're kind of trained, if one detail is wrong, you say to the judge or the attorney, Your Honor, this is wrong. I think that there are other things that can be wrong here.
Okay.
So Dave has so many inaccuracies, and he never gets called directly to his face on them.
So you don't think the story is accurate? For those who don't know, he basically claims that Wolfie was a little bitch on tour, and he kicked what he thought were Dave groupies out of the arena, but it was actually somebody who worked for the company that was there with the paychecks for the 82 people that were working there, and he did it twice. So you don't think the story is valid at all?
I think there might be an element of truth to it, but let me put you in. Let me give you a little perspective here, because I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've been asking people behind the scenes as best as I can. So I'm not asking how you earn your money. I'm assuming it's because you're a successful damn podcaster, and it's my honor to be on your show.
It's my I bankroll my entire life with this show.
Of course, just like me. When you get paid, do you get a paper check from your employer?
Well, I get a printout of the money they deposited. I get what you're saying. So no, not anymore. Not a long time.
No. So Van Halen has an accountant that comes to Jones Beach, 30 miles or so from its office at least, with 80 plus paper checks. And he said they carry Gucci bags. So 80 plus checks in a Gucci bag. And that's what they show up. And then a year or whatever later, they're playing the Hollywood Bowl, and that same accountant comes with another Gucci bag full of paper checks. Because in 2015, no one does direct deposit. Van Halen works for has a top accountant or financial manager, and they're using paper checks in 2015. So that checks out, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can play a little devil's advocate. And by the way, I have no inside information. I'm just saying, from an outsider's view, I mean, when he says Jones Beach, New York City, for someone in Minnesota, I'm like, close enough. And maybe he isn't being literal that she was holding the checks, but it was just that he kicked out business people was his point, not that so much that they were actually.
He said, he kicked out the person who had the 80 plus checks. And so I asked one of the people. I have different eras of Roth employees or former employees that I go to and go, is this true? Is that true? That kind of a thing. So I asked somebody from the Roth organization in the last 8-9 years, hey, do you get paid by paper check? And he goes, no, direct deposit every time.
Okay.
So, and then Eddie also had the same accountant, Barb, for 25 plus years, like nearing till his death. So wouldn't Wolfgang know who Eddie's?
He would probably think so, yeah. Yeah,
there's so many things that just don't add up. And the whole thing that he said at the beginning, that Wolfgang was complaining to everybody about, look at me, he won't look at me. Okay, devil's advocate. What if Wolfgang was the band leader or the music director of Van Halen? We know that Eddie wasn't.
Right.
Alex might not be. Dave wasn't. Shouldn't you be looking at the music director for cues? Because your front man goes on long-winded rants and stories in the middle of the show.
That's a good point.
And doesn't come to sound check ever. Hey, what do I know? What do I know, Bakko?
What about this? Have you, in any of the conversations you've had over the years writing this book with anybody have you ever heard any type of salacious kind of rumor that along the lines of Wolfie's a little brat? Anything at all?
I haven't heard that. I've heard from a person who worked with Dave directly for more than 10 years that Dave was never nice in the direction of Wolfgang.
Okay.
I heard that he felt that Wolfgang did not pay his dues. And in turn, he was not complimentary of Wolfgang. I said that on one of my episodes of the DLR cast. It's a podcast that's Dave-centric that I co-host with Steve Roth, no relation. And a person commented, that's not true. I was backstage with Dave, and he said nice things about Wolfgang. And I said, okay, devil's advocate, maybe one time you heard him say something. But when I talk to people who worked with Dave within the last decade, I kind of borderline protect the identities of my sources, but they never heard Dave ever say one nice thing ever about Eddie, not even after he passed. So what are the odds, if he was never complimentary of Eddie, that he was complimentary of Eddie's son, who's a package deal?
Correct. Yeah. All right, fair enough. I think we've covered that. I appreciate that you let me kind of sidetrack into that, but let's.
I hope what I'm saying is okay, and it doesn't get you on any fatwa lists.
Oh, I try to hunt down those lists. On a side note, I've been trying. I really don't go on Twitter as much as I used to ever since some of the changes. But for a while there, I was really trying to get Beyonce's the beehives after me, and never, because I never tried. But then one day, I kind of an innocuous comment. I got Cardi B people all over my ass because I said something. I think it was like I just said, getting a diamond record through streaming is not really the same accomplishment as it was back when you actually had to sell a physical product. So I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what I want from the Beehive. Come at me. But so no, I look forward to Azalgid. I hope you stirred some shit up. Yeah. So
I wrote this book as just a diehard fan of David Lee Roth. And then after I finished the book, all these people just came out of the woodwork and like, let me tell you what it's really like working with David Lee Roth. And so now for the last 2 months, I've kind of been going, can someone tell me something nice or complimentary or factual or a good deed? Because I'm waiting on that turf or that territory again, because that man does so many reprehensible things, and the average person just thinks of him as smiley 1985 Dave, not mean face frowny Dave that fires everybody.
And I think I hope to at least kind of crack open a little bit of the personality of David Lee Roth as we go through this. But because I see what you're saying. I think a lot of people, it's like you and I, Darren, we're a special breed. We peel the onion and find out. We start crying. You know what I mean? So most people just want to play, the hits, man.
The way that I explain it, and I'm hoping you agree, is we take entertainment way too seriously. And the average person thinks that entertainment is just entertainment. Yeah. They just go, it's a song. And people like you and me, hope you don't mind the association, kind of go, well, who wrote it? Who produced it?
Exactly.
Did anyone get ripped off? What's the deal on this whole thing? Why is a 70-year-old singing "She's Hit Me Like 10,000 Volts"? Why is a 70-year-old? It's cool for him to be singing about love at first sight when you're 70.
Yeah,
along those lines.
That's a different topic all there, but and I think it's healthy too. I would encourage people of our ilk to embrace the fact that people don't take the same time we do. It's just healthy to acknowledge that, and then you can also have relationships with people that aren't as heavy into it. So, well, why David Lee Roth? Why did you decide to write a book about David Lee Roth?
Always loved David Lee Roth and Van Halen, and kind of as a grown up as a big Howard Stern fan, I always enjoyed the throwing in inappropriate, unrelated questions into interviews. So I was taping interviews all the time and throwing in, and the last question, who is the best lead singer of Van Halen? Just doing something like that. And then over time, you do enough interviews, you see, okay, you're going to get Billy Sheehan, you're going to get Steve Vai, you're going to get all these people that played with Roth or knew Roth. And over time, I just see Van Halen, anything related to Van Halen got a lot of traffic. And sometimes my pieces, when I'd get a quote about Van Halen, I'd get a pickup. So over time, I realized, wow, I have a lot of content. And then over time, I'd realize, oh, this person I know actually worked with Van Halen in some form. I had so many interviews, and I thought, maybe this is a book here. And I pitched every literary agent I could. And two were interested. One was kind of full of crap because she's one of those people that goes, I love it. Now tell me what it's about. One of those kinds of agents. Yeah. And then the other person goes, oh, give me a pitch that's this, and this. And I went, okay, here you go. I think agents give that to writers as a way to get them to go away and never contact them again, because you're not going to spend pro bono that much time in writing a pitch. I did, gave it to him. He sold it within 48 hours, and then it's like, oh, I can write a book now.
And it's something that's kind of needed. I know. I mean, you're familiar with Greg Renoff, I assume. I think you mentioned him in the book, actually.
Great guy. He's in the book. He comes up in almost every interview I do.
Yeah,
great. Credit to that guy. He should be on Van Halen's payroll.
Yeah, he's super cool too. But Van Halen, I like AC/DC. It's like, as big as they are, there is just kind of this lack of information out there. Even when it comes to like they're going to be touring soon, you know. I mean, it's just like everything is kept so close to the vest. So I was encouraged by this. Your book opens with you referencing an interview you did with us some time back. Is that the only interview you ever did with David or Dave?
Not by my choice or doing, but that is the only interview that I did in '03 when he was in the Diamond Dave album era.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried numerous times and numerous ways to connect with him and didn't even get a no. It was just Dave's camp. There's one manager / accountant / handler, and everything goes through her. And if it's no, they just ignore you.
Yeah, okay.
So that didn't happen, but I got 100+ people related to Dave and or fans of Dave to speak with me for the book.
Oh, this is very well fleshed out as far as telling the story. Plus, by getting so many different people to kind of offer their stories, you end up kind of painting a picture that isn't all just one-sided from one person's perspective. And I always appreciate books like that. It's almost like you're reading the 4 KISS members' books, and then you kind of get this overall story because they're all coming at it with different perspectives. But so. It's very well done. Now, one of the things that came up in the early part. Now, I remember when A Different Kind of Truth came out. They did kind of a surprise show at Cafe Wah, and then at that point I first heard the whole backstory of how Dave is connected to that and the actual influential people that are connected to that place as far as performers. But your book, I find out that not only did his uncle own this influential club in New York City, he also managed Richard Pryor. And I got to tell you, I won't berate this or belabor this too much, but I have this problem, like this whole idea you're raised with the idea, just get out there, play gigs, do this stuff. The more I read about these famous bands, whether it's Slash being babysat by David Geffen, nobody makes it. It just seems like you're way too connected before you ever decide to even pick up an instrument. So, I mean, good on him for doing what he did, but God, everybody's just got some connection, it seems like.
Well, Cafe Wah is in New York City, unlike Jones Beach.
Okay. So, I thought maybe I misspoke. Okay.
Yeah. No, Cafe Wah is still there. It's still there. It still looks exactly like it did in probably 1963. And a lot of famous people passed through there, but it's never been a venue where bands go, please let me play there.
Okay.
It doesn't have that mystique of CBGB, which was crap. CBGB was terrible. Did you ever go there?
No, well, I recently, but it's John Varvatos' store now. But he kind of kept some of the imagery up there, so you still kind of get a little bit of the feel. But I definitely know the history of it, and not known for its great sound system or setup.
No, the bathrooms were abysmal. The sight lines were bad. The staff wasn't nice. The T-shirts were cool. The T-shirts are still cool. The brand name is cool. Everyone played there. But it was never in the great part of their career unless you're Green Day and you just go, hey, pop-up show right now. We're at CBGB. Cafe Wah never got that cool of CBGB, even though you could say it was much cooler than CBGB because if you go prior, pre-cancellation Bill Cosby, you have to give that disclaimer. Pre what we knew about Bill Cosby. And Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan, all these cool people, but we don't see the T-shirts of Cafe Wah. It's for some reason not thought of as one of the coolest venues of all time in New York City.
We talked a little bit about KISS. What do you make of the Gene Simmons story connection to Van Halen is super well known and famous. But it seems like in the last, 5-10 years, there's some cracks in the Gene version kind of coming out. That he didn't really ever sign them to any management deal. Like that was squashed by Aucoin and basically Paul Stanley saying, no, I don't want you to do this. Paul actually saying that he saw Van Halen before Gene and then took Gene and then Gene just kind of went and kind of poached him. Well, how much of that do you actually know about? I mean, I know Gene. I think we could. There's demos out there that we can go listen to that Gene recorded. Does he really own the 24 track? Is that his own property? Just by his own, graciousness of being a good guy, he's not releasing them, trying to make money off them.
I have a very alternative view of Gene Simmons because he was so nice to me on a few occasions. And I was going in expecting this monster that was going to be rape me. And he was this fun, funny, patient person that made me go, okay, so this is in real life how the wrestling bad guys are generally really nice and the good guys have no time for the fans and they're the difficult ones. I think that Gene Simmons playing a movie bad guy, a Lex Luthor kind of character, a mastermind, and then in real life he's going, oh, there's no cameras here? How old are you, son? You know, he's just Uncle Gene, and
Okay.
he's very. But you know, you mentioned you know your stuff there. There's the Gene I discovered Kiss. There's the Paul I discovered Kiss, and then I told Gene. There's the Kim Fowley kind of ones.
Yeah.
Then Rodney Bingenheimer has his. There's 25 people who discovered Van Halen at this point in time. Bill Gazzari, I'm sure, would say he discovered Van Halen. Marshall Burl will say he discovered Van Halen. All these stories kind of intersect, and you don't know who's who and what's what. But you do know that Warner Brothers signed them for a very small, low tier deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one of these things where the band sold 50,000 units independently and there was a bidding war. Every label supposedly passed on Van Halen a few times after Gene showed them to them, after Marshall Burl or whatever. So what we do know is they were a cover band that worked really hard and got really good at what they did. They were not the label priority. The label didn't know what they had with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they realized what they had with them, you know, even though it was kind of a rush job, that first album, they went, oh. And then that was a big hit over time, although it didn't have the hit singles like we remember it did. In other words, if you look up the chart positions of the songs on Van Halen 1, it's not like it had 4 top 10 hits.
Right.
Nothing like that. Running with the Devil wasn't this top 10 single like we remember it as. It's total revisionist history. So everything from how they got signed to who discovered them to how big Van Halen was at the beginning, totally made up, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I mean, and that happens a lot with bands. You kind of, I when it comes to kind of those early stories about what they did, I don't get as bent out of shape as I do about some of these. Like, I mean, I really don't understand why Gene. Well, I guess I understand why he wants people to think he's the smartest person in the room, but it's just I don't know. But yeah, well, sometimes. And what band besides Guns N' Roses didn't get turned down by everybody? I still want someone to tell me how you can get that far. I gave it a shot. I couldn't even get a record label to turn me down. Yeah, that seems like a lot, like almost a sign of success that someone at Warner Brothers said nope, or whatever label. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. One of my mentors who I put a little bit in the book towards the beginning, David Krebs, he co-managed Aerosmith and AC/DC and the Scorpions and Ted Nugent.
I know the name.
You know, all those kinds of bands. And he was in the mailroom with David Geffen in the early days. He was around everyone. He did everything. But the more you talk to David Krebs, he'll go, you know that I turned down Metallica and I turned down Motley Crue and I turned down Poison and I was supposed to manage the Stones, but that didn't happen. And you go, didn't you do enough? Didn't you already have 4 or 5 huge bands?
Yeah.
And then the guys who managed Metallica were under you and Def Leppard and all that kind of stuff. Didn't you do enough?
Yeah.
But there's always, take any band, and just as you said, they got turned down by just about everyone but 2 people, usually.
Right. Anyway, enough on that. So let's move ahead to the first split around 84. This is always one of those areas that you talk about Dave not remembering everything, or he often will have a different version of a story that he's told in the past.
Different kind of truth.
And I've kept up with that's a good one. There is also like Eddie's side of the story. Eddie and Alex have kind of hung in there and kind of stayed. They're a little more consistent, I think, but I don't always believe them either. Was Dave fired or did he quit?
Dave was entirely fired. Okay. Without a doubt in my mind, he was fired. And that's based on anecdotes. And it's also based on the secret memo that not everybody knows about the final Van Halen shows that were supposed to be in 85. It's this typed up marked document that says confidential, that's stamped, that somebody sent me. that has been going around. And they were supposed to tease it like these were the last shows, we're breaking up, we're doing the biggest things. And it was eventually going to come back. But they didn't quite see Dave making a movie and making a solo EP that way, even though Eddie, in a 3-year period, basically did that Nicolette Larson record where he played guitar, Beat It, the Seduction of Gina TV movie, the Wildlife TV movie, the Brian May Starfleet project, and playing on that Dweezil Zappa single. He could do anything he wants, and then Dave does one thing. It's, I don't think this guy's loyal.
Yeah, I'm not saying Dave shouldn't have had the opportunity, because I remember that's in the book, that what you just talked about there, and I remember my initial thought is, I think being a guest musician on somebody else's project is not in the same league as saying it's the David Lee Roth show. I mean, it's a little more me than it is like playing a guitar solo on a Michael Jackson record.
It is, but if you look at how everything shaped up, the timeline of Michael Jackson Beat It, he didn't tell Dave he was doing it. If you believe Dave's story, he was walking into a 7-Eleven and he saw some ladies buy a truck and listening to the radio, and they were blasting it, and he heard it. And this is if you believe Dave, but he goes, this person sounds like they're doing every one of Ed's tricks. This is a good impression somebody's doing of Ed. So he didn't know, hey, Ed's going to play on this Quincy Jones record. So I think they were keeping very, very different circles, because I believe Ed was roped into that through Steve Lukather, who was looped into that through Quincy Jones. So Ed was not hanging out in the same world as Dave, the adventurer, Dave who's doing martial arts and the jungle studs, doing the trips to the remote places. Van Halen, it's not like the visual of the Beatles. You see the 4 Beatles in the matching suits and hanging out, or the Monkees. Van Halen wasn't like that. They were different dudes who were not really hanging out, despite the narrative that Dave puts out there.
Yeah. If memory serves right, though, wasn't Billie Jean the lead single on Thriller? And if I am right, I think the cat was probably out of the bag before he was at a 7-Eleven a few months later. I think he works in the industry. I think probably somebody said, hey, this album that's already out and is doing well, by the way, Eddie does a guitar solo on it. So he probably didn't find out slamming a Slurpee in a parking lot is all I'm getting at. That's my only point there.
You hit the nail on the head, that it's this recurring thing where Dave has these colorful memories. And there are these great stories. And the average person can go, man, that guy is awesome and entertaining. And people like you and me go, that's
something's
not
off here.
True. And then people go, well, what does it matter? What does it matter?
Yeah.
And you go, but I kind of want good people to be making my music. Kind of along the lines of, you want the food to maybe be organic or farm to table when possible, as much as possible.
Yeah.
You didn't want your hamburger to be handled by somebody who didn't wash their hands. I want my music to come from people that I sort of still believe in and think that they appreciate the fan base and they care about the fans.
I enjoy that food analogy quite a bit. I have a different perspective on that. It's not very. Yours is a much better human perspective than mine. I want train wreck, drug addict, just stumbling. Only to a healthy level. At a certain point, they get sober and clean things up. But I don't want I don't rock stars buying vineyards. No, man, I don't want them eating healthy.
How about this? Let's find the middle ground and compromise.
Okay, let's do it.
Sometimes the rock star is so non-vineyard seeming that it's awesome that they're a vineyard person. So, for example, when you find out that Jerry from Devo is a vineyard person, to me, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But if I were to find out that Sammy Hagar is a vineyard person, not into it.
That's okay. When you put it like that, I can concede that. There are certain people in certain kind of music, it makes a little more sense. But yeah, when it's what's the name of the singer from Tool? Maynard. When it's him, it's just like, come
Maynard.
on. Yeah. Come on. But yeah, we're getting a little off topic here.
No, we're not. If Chuck D has a vineyard, I'm into that one.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's Zach De La Rocha, I'm not into that because that's actually hypocritical. That is the machine, not raging against it.
I like how I think it was the second reunion with Sammy Hagar where Eddie was all about like those guys are using the Van Halen name to sell hot sauce and tequila, and he was upset about that. That's pretty good stuff.
Is he wrong?
Is he at that point though? Don't you think they can do their own ventures and it really isn't necessarily piggyback? Like if I joined Van Halen and then did that, then I think yes, that would be something like that. But I think at this point, I mean, Michael's been in the band since the beginning. Sammy was a well-known artist before, and plus his time with Van Halen was already, 4 records that were huge. So I think he can have business interests without it being necessarily like, thank God for Van Halen to help me promote this. I think he was doing that before them, but
any other band, I would agree with you, but not in Van Halen, because what went down with Cabo Wabo was actually weird and awful.
The club we're talking,
the whole
right?
band invested.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say again?
No,
the club?
You confirmed it there.
Yeah, so the whole band put money into it. It supposedly lost a bundle. And Sammy bought them out and turned around and made it this huge kind of thing. So that was a long-term point of contention within Van Halen. Maybe the beginning of the end was the success of Cabo Wabo.
I think that's the crux of where Eddie's bad feelings come from, though. I think I never met the guy, so I don't know him personally. And it's just in some of his own interviews and the stories you hear, it seems like as he got further along in life, and I don't know, maybe it could be tied to alcoholism. There's a lot of things that could explain it, but it seems like he got a little more paranoid and a little more like a close circle of people around him. And that
totally, yeah.
Okay, that's not always healthy, is all I'm getting at. Well, the paranoia, obviously, but also limiting the amount of people but it's a defense mechanism.
But Van Halen had a lot of people under non-disclosures, and that's why you don't hear a lot of the dirt in confirmed sources. Okay. That's why most of the things are kind of rumors. And Dave wasn't far behind in the 2000s with the non-disclosures.
Yeah.
And I don't think good people make people sign non-disclosures.
Yeah, if we're not talking about some proprietary technology, if it's just because you don't want someone to tell the truth about you, what a bad person you are, I don't think NDA should apply. But I'm also not a lawyer, Darren. So I'm not gonna. I don't know how far I'm gonna get with that. You got me off. I was gonna go on something there. We were talking about. Oh shit! Fuck it.
We were talking about the second time that he came back to Van Halen, the Sammy 2004 tour. But before that, about the Thriller timeline could be a little off.
Yeah, okay.
And was Dave fired or quit? And then I sidebarred with vineyards, celebrity vineyards, and should Salt and Pepper have a vineyard? And
they should sell salt and pepper. But it was the non-disclosure thing. How come they didn't make Mitch Malloy sign one?
That's a good question. So, Van Halen is kind of a mix between sloppy and technically proficient in every single way. So you never know if you're going to get the best of the best or the worst of the worst. And that 2004 tour was supposedly the worst of the worst, unfortunately. And the years leading up to that, things were a little sloppy behind the scenes too.
Yeah. How much of that is just Eddie? I mean, I know we're talking about David today, but because he sounds like a real fucking piece of work to work with just in general anyway. But I don't know that Eddie's the easiest guy to get along with. I mean, it seemed like with Sammy, the first few years were really good, and then it just got kind of contentious and weird.
Yeah, you notice how no one is ever slagging Michael Anthony at any time except Eddie Van Halen in certain interviews when you question his singing or his playing or something like that. But no one had a problem with Michael Anthony, and they screwed him a few times with royalties and the rights to the name, and he just went, okay. And you notice Michael Anthony's still...
I'm sorry, yeah.
Oh, I'm just going to say he's still married to the same person. Everyone loves Michael Anthony. So I think most bands have that one non-dominant member that just goes, okay, I like to play. And that was Michael Anthony.
Sure.
And then meanwhile, everyone else is fighting around them.
And you kind of need that to a certain extent. You got to have some balance with everybody. With the timeline on Michael signing away his royalties is something that seems to be up in the air. I think in interviews somewhat recently, Michael talked about that he signed it away on the 2004 tour, but I heard something from a book recently that it was actually back in like the 1984 or before that era that he gave away some of his stuff. Is that kind of what you were just referencing?
Yeah, I believe the royalties to the publishing on that particular record, 1984, I believe that was in the mid 80s. And then the signing away the name was around the 2004 tour. So again, they multiple times went after Michael Anthony, the nice, pleasant person who is always happy to work.
Well, he's got his hot sauce money. He doesn't need this. Well, you kind of
answered. I put him in that category. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to.
There's just a little lag, people. We're not trying to talk over the top of each other. You kind of answered this just a little bit ago, but was Dave under the impression that they were not going to continue without him?
That's unclear. I don't know if he even thought about that, but I do think that he thought that he was Van Halen, that he wasn't just 1/4 of the group.
Right.
That's what you can surmise, because he eventually became the video person and the person designing the stage, coming up with the designs. The cover songs was Dave. Eddie wasn't going, hey, how can we do more covers?
Yeah, Dave likes the cover.
Was Dave. Yes. So you look at all those things, and that looks like a band under Dave's control. And Dave was close with Ted Templeman, who you could also say was also kind of running Van Halen.
Sure. And there's that whole story about like the photo session for the Women and Children First record, which that's pretty early on, and Dave's already like, he doesn't even invite the band for the album cover photo shoot. He just hires his own photographer and a guy of note too, Helmut Newton, is that right?
Helmut Newman, Helmut Newton, I believe.
Okay, Newton. And then the band finds out, and then they're like, all right, well, we'll do another shoot, and we'll take a poster of just Dave and shove it inside. So pretty early on, Dave was like, yeah, this is pretty much me. So,
yeah, I never dispute was preterite, present, future, Dave an egomaniac. Yes. But it's also that drive that made the band, because without Dave, Van Halen's not very poppy. It's not very mainstream. It's not very commercial. And without Dave, those songs would probably be 7, 8, 9 minutes. Eddie would be a little to his devices with Prague and long songs. It would be more Tony Iommi meets Yes, in my humble opinion. Do you agree with that?
I do. And if you know, I mean, the songs got longer pretty much the moment Sammy joined the band. You went from between 2.5 to 3.5 minute songs to now songs that could stretch as long as 7 or 8 minutes. Most of them are around the 5-minute mark, but it was almost immediate. And it seemed like with each record, they got just a little bit longer. And then you get to like Van Halen 3, and he's really stretching, the limits as far as the length of a track. So yeah, 100%. I think it's an astute observation.
And Eat 'Em and Smile is a really short record. Mm-hmm. And Dave did this one interview that I only saw until recently, after I finished the book, with Martha Quinn. And he talks about growing up, how he loved watching TV because there was a commercial every 10 minutes. And that's kind of his attention span. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
He's not a super focused guy. And that's his best and worst quality at the same time. He's going to do whatever he feels like. Is he going to finish it? Debatable. Is it going to be great? Probably not, unless there's an editor or a second voice in the mix. So I think Dave at his best is with Eddie or Steve Vai or Pete Angelis or Matt Sensio. Somebody that, I don't know if the word is trusted, but somebody who can fight him a little bit and refine it into being good.
Yeah, and as much as I mean, because it seems like everything has been, there's like a negativity overshadowing this. I mean, Dave is, first of all, he's fascinating. He basically invented the entire lead singer that we saw throughout the 80s with the hair metal and stuff. But also, he sometimes gets, because he can ramble and change directions, and it kind of comes off a little bit nonsensical at times. But for someone like yourself, and because I know I've experienced, I got to believe you have too, that when you see enough of it, you start to realize, oh wait, there's an actual constant stream of consciousness here, that it isn't just gibberish and garbage all the time. Like he's actually tying things together that entire time. In other words, I'm saying he's a lot smarter than I think some people would give him credit for, but he also doesn't give a shit. It seems like he seems immune to any type of criticism.
I go back and forth on that second thing, where the Dave image in the original Van Halen in the beginning of the solo career is not a surfer dude, but it's this LA, I don't know anything, this genius who's pretending to be dumb and a slacker. And you go, so you're a slacker, but you're like super shredded, and you care about the clothes you wear, and you care about what your hair looks like, and you care about what the stage looks like. And at this point in the song, every time you're going to do a kick or a split or a jump, and you know what you're going to say at every part of the show. So it's basically choreographed-ish. That's the opposite of not caring.
Right. No, very much.
His live show is dynamics oriented. So like he keeps doing that like open mouth, like that kind of crap. And you go, no, this guy cares more than anyone in terms of this kind of stuff. But I think that only works when there's an editor, because too much Dave is going to be a disaster. And I look at most of his output from the last 20 years, and a lot of it is garbage. I will outwardly tell you it's garbage. The music, the thing he put up on Instagram today of him dancing in the overalls. He keeps putting out these videos of him dancing in his house in overalls. First of all, that's not from the last 5 years. These are old videos. He's not telling you are old videos. I've confirmed that with people. But who's that for? I love this guy because of Hot for Teacher, the first 6 Van Halen albums, even Smell Skyscraper. Who is asking for him sliding around in overalls? Like, who's this for? Isn't there someone who could say, no, Dave, this is a bad idea? And the last 20 years of him not really having that person to go, no, almost like a dog or a little child.
Bad Dave.
Yeah, bad Dave. Seriously.
The newspaper,
how is this on the level? So my gauge of how great and smart Dave can be, you look at the first 6 Van Halen albums with him, then you look at the EP and the next 2 full-length albums. I don't love A Little Ain't Enough. Some people swear to me it's the best Dave solo album, and I wonder which drugs they're on personally.
Yeah.
But I look at how brilliant he was for about 10 to 15 years. And then I look at this other output and I go, something went wrong here. How does the same person make every right decision and suddenly makes every wrong decision? Do you have any theories?
I mean, I don't. I think it's part of his. Well, look at the No Holds Barbecue video, right? I got to see that as a bootleg about 10 years ago for the first time. I think it's up on YouTube now, but regardless,
it's on his YouTube, an edited version. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I've seen the original one, at least the one that was bouncing around the bootleg stuff, and to me, it was like, this is what it must visually be like to be in his head. It is just chaos, and I think he's influenced by so many things, and he's got so many interests that he wants to, like, I've been doing karate, I've been climbing skyscrapers, I became an EMT, I was the replacement DJ for Howard Stern, and I need to share all those experiences in the next 60 seconds, and that's kind of how it comes off to me. And I think at a certain point, almost all that experience, all those things that he gets into, because he dives deep. I mean, look at that weird body tattoo he decided to get. I think it's just overload, but nothing. Everything just keeps packing in, like he doesn't lose anything. You and I, someone tells us some new nugget of information, and then we lose something at the same time. So
you left out the part about him speaking Portuguese, Spanish, him drawing, sketching as part of that.
Yeah, keep it going.
The photo shoots, the hanging out with little people, the triplets chasing him, Karen McDougal before she took the Trump hush money and disappeared, being yelled at naked by Niels Lozauer, the playing a steel drum, playing an acoustic guitar. There might be a couple other things that he does in that, while being chased by security guards underneath his pool or something like that. I don't know, but what people told me about that is he didn't have great cash flow for most of the 90s. You or I would look at the money that Dave makes in a bad year and go, wow, right, we're rich.
Yeah.
But he always spends above his means. And in that era, he'd finally cleaned up his publishing a little bit. They'd renegotiated the Warner Music deal, so he's finally getting good royalties again. And he took that money, close to $1 million to make that No Holds Barbecue video. And I think he thought that was a fresh start, that maybe this was going to be a reality TV show or just a new direction. This was the new MTV. Only problem is he didn't really promote it. He didn't commercially distribute it. He just lost focus. He kind of went, this is my new thing. And then 2 or 3 months later, they, jangled keys in his face. And he's like, no, this is my new thing. And then 2 or 3 months later, no, this is my new thing. 2 or 3 months, no, this is my new thing. And that's been the last 20-ish years of being a Dave fan. You're like, is he a singer, a painter, a podcaster, a karate expert, a tattoo guy, a dance guy? What is this guy? And I don't say he's a Renaissance man. I just say he's an unfocused genius.
Okay, he's got a lot of hobbies.
Yeah.
Is his book, I know for a long time it was just out of print. Did they ever put that back out? Crazy from the Heat, I think it's called, right?
What I heard from a very smart person who knows stuff who was in the picture was that publisher just went, yeah, just take it back. We don't want to deal with you anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he didn't put it back in print. And people wanted him to write his second book, and he had a co-author aligned and all that, and he just walked. And he went back to Van Halen.
Now, there is a brilliant tease you have in the book that I found unfulfilling. I'm hoping you can clarify a little bit for me. So you have that lawsuit. I think it ended up being Watt versus Roth, and you give the numbers and stuff to Google. All I was able to find were like motions to dismiss. I couldn't find the actual details. Can you tell me what it's about? No, I'm curious, man.
I might still have the PDF in my email, so remind me and I'll see if I can send it to you. Okay. But it's a woman who's suing 100+ entities for stealing brainwaves and stealing thoughts and hijacking frequencies and poisoning people. It's like Dave and Google. It's a person who really needs a lot of help, to put it very, very nicely. But I don't know how it made it into a court filing that they could get David Lee Roth as one of the people who was an entity that was abusing her and messing up the whole world.
That's amazing. You also mentioned the Van Halen vault. I've seen, like over the years, lots of video footage of 5150 Studios, which I believe is where all this stuff is kept. Am I got that right? I have got to believe. Okay. I've got to believe that is a fucking clusterfuck of disorganization. Just, it seems like Eddie, as a creative, that's how he worked. He didn't really work with the idea of like, all right, let's make sure we properly label and catalog everything. Do you know anything about that? Is it organized? Is there any chance there's anything worth getting into, or is there a lot?
There's a few questions there,
yeah.
And there's a few quick things I could tell you. The first is, I remember reading that the band in the 80s had cataloged their stuff, but then that computer crashed. So I know that there was an early cataloging attempt. I have seen photos. I don't remember if these are the Andrew Bennett photos, because he was at the studio for a lot of time. It took video and photo, and then they ultimately stiffed him, and then they tried to silence him. But then he started putting out some of the stuff as NFTs into Facebook in recent years. And when you look at photos, sometimes you'll see catalog shelves behind them. So I think there's some of that. And then also Warner Brothers was able to find a lot of stuff for that 2004 box set. But I don't know if that's just the first 4 albums. And then when it came over to 5150, that's all under Ed's roof. Because they say that the first thing that they tracked, or one of the first things that they tracked for 1984, was a cover of In the Midnight Hour. And nobody has heard that. And there's rumors about that tape not even existing anymore. And then still we hear there's 2 or 3 other songs that didn't make 1984, unless they were just alternate titles for what did make the album. Nerdy people were looking at labels and able to deduce, okay, that might be that, or that may have become this, that kind of stuff. I don't think that there's 30 unreleased songs, because A Different Kind of Truth basically used up what was left over from the early days. But I think that there are more live recordings. I think that there are live videos, and I have nothing to base it on. I just think that they're waiting for the right moment or Warner Brothers renegotiation or something to put them out, because we do see those South American shows from '83. I think it's a 1982 show from Silver Spring, Maryland, or the Capitol Center, something like that. The US Festival, I think Van Halen owned the tape because they had to pay for that kind of stuff. There's that MTV Lost Weekend with Van Halen thing. I think the camera was running for some of that. Oakland 81, depending on who you ask, it was recorded for 3 songs, or they kept it on the whole night. So we don't know,
I bet there's got to be a lot of stuff that's just Eddie and Alex jamming, working things out. I mean, I don't know.
Noodling.
Yeah.
Let's call it noodling.
Yeah.
There's the second album with Sharon that supposedly they got really far into with Danny Korchmar producing. I'd be glad to listen to that.
Same.
I would have to assume that the first album with Sharon, which is very proggy and long songs, that the second one would have been more poppy.
I hadn't heard that they had gotten very far into recording that at all. That's pretty interesting. That's probably low on the list of shit they want to put out, though.
Agreed. I make fun of Gary Sharon only because his management team was pretty rude to me.
I think he prances around funny. He's a fancy boy. I think he's a great singer, and I thought he was a good fit for them when they picked him.
I'm with you. I think maybe even Nuno would have been a better pick as Van Halen's frontman, because that guy can do everything. But he gets crapped on for a lot of unfortunate reasons, and Mitch Malloy kind of does too. And nobody really talks about. I think Mitch brings it on
himself a little bit when aren't you that guy from Van Halen? Yeah, everybody asked me that. Mitch, nobody's asked you that ever in your life. No, maybe yourself while you're brushing your teeth. But...
He told me he was going to do an interview with me, and I said, okay, when? And then he ghosted me, and I came back to him, and then he ghosted me again or brushed me off. And that was some of the people for this book that they were like, yeah, anytime, LA style, anytime, man, let's do lunch. And then you go, okay, how about Tuesday at 4? I'm busy. Well, okay, Wednesday at 1, I'm busy. I thought you said anytime. And then they disappear.
Yeah.
And you don't know with the Van Halen, David Lee Roth world, are they bitter because they got fired in a weird way? Do they have bad memories? Are they tired of talking about the stuff? Are they under a non-disclosure? Are they cooking up a secret Van Halen project that they think they're going to do? Because I had a few people even who go, oh man, I'm going to write the book about Van Halen. It's going to be in my book. And then, it takes you 2-3 years to come out with the book that you've written, and you go, I don't see any of your books. You're dragging your feet.
Yeah, no doubt.
There's so much weirdness in the Van Halen world, like the Kiss world.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. Fortunately, there's a glut of information with Kiss, and there's so many people that never had to sign a non-disclosure. So there's all sorts of I don't know, salacious kind of shit there. So it's a lot of fun. But let me ask you this: is Dave the reason why there was never really any type of tribute show for Eddie? Wolfie has kind of intimated that someone in the camp, it would basically just be Dave or Alex, right? I mean, I think everybody heard that and said he's talking about Dave. Do you know anything about it? Is he the reason that things didn't kind of happen there?
I'm not allowed to say everything I know. There are a couple of people that fed me all the Dave information. I'm waiting for them to wait another 1 to 2 years for them to go, Dave's never going to hire me again. He's got nothing that he can sue me for. I don't care. Here's what really happened. Okay. I'm waiting for these people who I've befriended to just not care anymore. Because again, like what is there left? Because Dave kind of did a scorched earth thing over the last two weeks, and between that and the Van Halen inactivity in general, you're like, there's no legacy that you've devalued by leaking stuff. So what I can say is there were rehearsals of some form. And it's not like Alex Van Halen has never, ever stepped behind a drum kit ever since Eddie passed.
Okay.
The context of what happened, I can't really say, but there were attempts, and it's just the typical dysfunctionality. And that's why when Dave throws Wolfgang under the bus, I go, so Wolfgang has put out 2 albums in the last 3 years and been part of big tours and headlining tours and done all the media and been active on social media and talked to his fans. And then Dave has done like 3 interviews in the last 5-6 years, canceled the shows, then done corporate gigs. One of these people has a little more credibility than the other. Which one do you think?
I would give it to Wolfie, but a little bit of pushback because I like Wolfie, and it's kind of cool what he's doing, and I get it. But he'll go on social media and go, I'm so sick of all these old white guys just want me to play Panama every night. Also, check me out on my upcoming tour, opening for the Scorpions. Yeah. Who do you think is coming to the show, man? If you really want to separate, don't go on the tour with all these Guns N' Roses and all these things. You know what I mean? Those are old white guys that want to hear Van Halen.
Yeah, so I've never told this story publicly, but I once got into an argument with, while he was still alive, with Tom Petty's younger daughter. She was a friend of a friend, and I said something nice about Dave Grohl. And she said something like, what is it with all you white guys in your trivia? And you go, what? Yeah, and then I said, you know that your dad asked Dave Grohl to be in his band. She's like, no, he didn't. Like, okay, pretty sure that's in the Foo Fighters documentary. Pretty sure he was on SNL with Tom Petty.
I think it's in the Tom Petty documentary.
What's up with you white guys?
Oh, God.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I don't love his behavior on social media some of the time. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that money solves all of your problems. So yes, he grew up very privileged, but I think that he might be as good of a guitarist as his father. I think he's a better drummer than his uncle.
Ooh.
And
whoa.
I think it's a different kind of drumming, and Alex is one of the best drummers. Mm-hmm. But I think Wolfie on every instrument is a virtuoso. Mm-hmm. And possibly we haven't seen the best of what's to come. But I also predict within 5 years we get that tour where he plays Panama.
Right on. Well, before I let you go here, we're kind of getting towards where I tend to why I'm thinking. I had a handful of kind of, staged questions I wanted to ask you with. What's your favorite Dave story?
I would say towards the end of the book about how they had to buy the David Lee Roth Instagram handle from the bass player of the Muffs, who was just on social media at David Lee Roth. and they had to buy it. They kind of strong-armed him and gave him a little bit of cash. And Ronnie's such a nice guy that he went, okay, here you go. But that for a while, the early Dave posts on social media, if you scroll all the way down to the comments, you say, where's Ronnie? That Ronnie Barnett, people still thought it was his account. I don't know if that's a good story. I think with Dave, it's weird because we associate him with little people and the bikini bodybuilder security guards and all that. Yeah. And to me, all that went from hilarious to heartbreaking because he's super exploiting people.
Yeah.
It's not that really funny when you think about he was just exploiting a bunch of little people who were hard up for work.
It is weird.
Are you with me that it goes from like hilarious to tragic pretty quickly in Dave World?
I think I'm guessing you were around the same age, but I remember like when I first saw some of that stuff, like with his Eat 'em and Smile and the Crazy from the Heat EP, and you saw some of that stuff. It was more I had a juvenile brain. I wasn't really developed properly to understand why this was offensive or like you said, you're exploiting people. But as you get older, you go, it's like Christine 16 with Kiss. It's just like, or 17 with Winger. I had no problem with that when I was in high school, but it's like, God, now even Kip's like, I kind of feel weird playing this, but anyway.
It's almost like a 70-year-old singing a song called She Struck Me with 10,000 Volts. Almost.
That's a nice. I like to keep going back to that. All right, my next one.
It's so great to me. The whole Ace going, this song is so good, it's going to make Gene and Paul look like Cretans or something like that. Like, really? That song? Okay, Ace. Go back to bed.
All a bunch of imbeciles. I don't know how much time you spend on YouTube, but we did a scripted bit that you can see there. It's also any podcast player, but it's about 7 minutes of your time that I think is worth it, where remember when Ace was going to call into Eddie Trunk after 7 days if Paul didn't apologize? So we did a whole bit where we were a news team covering the big dirt that was going to come out, and and of course Ace doesn't deliver. But anyway,
I'm listening, and I'm looking forward to how many times you say "ack" in that 7 minutes.
All right, what's your favorite Dave quote?
Oh man, I really should have a good one. I mean,
you want to think about it while I give you mine?
Please.
First of all, he's got a bunch. One of the early ones was even the best women are only good for about 2 hours in bed. I don't know why that one. I can't remember exactly the verbiage, but this one I do. Is like Sammy Hagar always sings about love, and I ain't talking about love. I always thought that was a brilliant way to sum up the difference between the two of them. So,
around the apartment a lot. My wife gets roped into all the David Lee Roth madness. Like she does the yow. She has a much better one than me, just in the middle, just like to startle me out of nowhere. She'll do a yow kind of thing. But I love the nothing but yeah. You could just say that all the time. I thought I had my favorite Roth quote, but I still can't find anywhere he said this or if it was just attributed to him. Somebody who knows their stuff swears that David Lee Roth said, they just had a talk with him, and he goes, "It's all sushi bar." And I've no idea what that means. If he's trying to say that life metaphorically is that you're sitting at a counter and you tell the person what you want and not everyone likes the same thing, or if it was just nonsense. Because some of his quotes are just total nonsense, and some of them are so smart, and you don't know what's what.
Yeah. I think he's more on point than Steven Tyler, who has a similar kind of like random gibberish kind of thing. But I think his David, I think more often than not, there's something there. So I think we're just missing it.
Yeah. Did you ever see the press conference when it was them two and Billy Joel in Australia in 2012? You definitely see Billy Joel kind of nod off or be puzzled by something Roth says. It's kind of great because Billy Joel and David Lee Roth are kind of the exact opposites. Yeah. And Roth is all fake smiles and quotes, and Billy Joel is just in a baseball cap going, yeah. Mm-hmm. hmm I'm glad you don't know anything about me. I don't care about any of you. I'm getting in the helicopter. See ya. And David Lee Roth is, you know, one of the points of contention on the Sammy Hagar tour. Somebody told me that he did in the early 2000s was Roth had 6 security guards, and clearly it's not because he was that worried about security. It's more like, hey, look, I have 6 security guards around me,
Yeah.
and so everything is look at me. And in small doses, that is the best. And then when you see that same thing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, you go, this is terrible. So there's your Dave take for me, unfortunately.
One thing I did think about while reading your book is all the people that have worked with him and have had kind of their own little stories that they would share, whether it's Eddie or Alex or Sammy or anybody. It seems like there is this. I'm curious. I want to work with the guy just so I want to see, can I actually verbalize what it's like to work with him better than these guys? Because it seems like the best they come up with is like, yeah, there's something with that guy. And I'm like, well, it's got to be more than that, right? I mean, it's just.
It's Dave's gonna Dave,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's like I've heard that some people can be like a Dave whisperer, where they know where he's going and they stick around for a while, but it's ultimately going to end really badly.
Yeah.
And you don't know when that's going to end really badly. So when you look at somebody like Matt Sensio, who was his manager late 90s through early into the Van Halen reunion, he worked his way up from bass tech to kind of an assistant to kind of a manager. And you look at Ed Anderson, and he was just a bodyguard to ultimately, I guess, the head of crew or head of security to eventually Dave's manager from just being a bodyguard. So I think that you eventually learn how to handle him, but then one day it's just going to be clear, okay, this is over. And you don't know what you did. You don't know why you're gone. You're just gone. And that's kind of it. You never talk to the guy ever again.
Yeah, I was surprised by that, because there's a bunch of those moments that you kind of talk about. Then a couple during the Crazy from the Heat movie kind of creation deal, but or I might be thinking of the No Holds Barbecue with the cellist or whatever.
Yeah, violin player. Yeah,
regular listeners to this show will be they'd be very upset with me if I didn't ask you this brain teaser. What is the greatest Van Halen song?
Oh, Hot for Teacher.
That is incorrect. It is Panama. Panama is the correct answer. So
interesting. Okay, now I want to hear why, and you might turn me on this one. Why is Panama the best Van Halen song?
Well, it's the best, and that's really all you need to know. It's kind of a recurring bit that we do on here, where, and I'll do it for this episode too, so you can kind of, if you listen back, you can hear what it is. But after I say and I tell you it's Panama, then boom, it just kicks into the chorus of Panama for about 3 seconds, and then we come back and we're talking still. So I've asked a lot of people on my show. It's my personal favorite. If that's the actual answer, it's my personal favorite. I think it does sum up everything great about Van Halen, from the lyrics to even the story about the lyrics. I heard that recently, and then Eddie's guitar solo on that is one of the. I mean, look, the guy's got a list of iconic, tracks out there, but to me, it's a perfect encapsulation of everything. That is my favorite Van Halen record, the entire 1984 album. I think from the original lineup.
Sure.
I mean, I probably the first album's a better overall, but for whatever reason, I think 1984 is their second solid record. I think they're kind of spotty in between there. I mean, the highs are really high, but some of the covers get a little silly.
Totally.
But yeah, nothing wrong with Hot for Teacher.
Totally. Anytime somebody goes, you know what my favorite Van Halen song is? And you go, what? And they go, In a Simple Rhyme. I go, no, it's not. No one really likes In a Simple Rhyme that much. You're just saying that to be different because it's the one Van Halen song that's proggy and long. No one wants to hear In a Simple Rhyme, ever. No, they don't.
I'm with you. Yeah. Or Happy Trails. I haven't actually had anybody tell me they liked In a Simple Rhyme, though. So,
I think Frank Meyer told me that's his favorite, and he covered it. And
is there any chance he hates Van Halen and that's his favorite song? That would explain it, you know.
It's kind of like when people never can admit that the hit song is the best song or one of the best songs. You go, what's your favorite Van Halen song? Dirty Movies. And you go, no, it's not. The Full Bug. No, it's not. They're good songs. No, of course not. Panama and Hot for Teacher and Dance the Night Away are 80 times better than any of these songs.
Yeah.
They are perfect songs. Jamie's Crying, perfect song. All these are perfect songs. Don't give me this in a simple rhyme stuff as being good. No.
Trying too hard. Do you know who Phil X is?
Oh yeah, I've had the pleasure of interviewing him.
He does these little like guitar things. It just blew my mind. He broke down the running with the devil riff. Back in the day when I was in a band, we tried to play that song, and I really couldn't quite get that. Anyway, I just figured it's because my fingers are fat. I'm not hitting it right. And then here we are 25 years later. He shows this video where he just tunes the B string to just a little flat. And then because he played it, and I'm like, well, that kind of sounds shitty like the way when I was doing it. And then he hits that thing flat, and then he hits it, and it sounds perfect. And I'm like instantly like trying to. I love that guy's approach. He's a huge Van Halen guy. He's always sharing little tips and tricks. I've recently become a huge fan of just him as a social media personality more than the guitar player currently in Bon Jovi. So.
I didn't realize there was a second guitar player in Bon Jovi.
Yeah, he replaced Richie Sambora when Richie Sambora quit. He's in the band right now, and I believe he was actually made.
Oh, I thought you meant there's a second guy.
Oh, yeah, no,
that they replaced because Bon Jovi is doing that thing where I called the Bon Jovi Big Band, where you go in all the early classic photos of Bon Jovi. There's 5 guys, and now you look on stage. And there's a second keyboardist and a percussionist and a violinist. You know what?
That's better than using backing tracks, man. Throw a couple extra bodies up there. If I can see them and that's what I'm hearing, I can appreciate that. But, when Joe Elliott has his voice 14 times coming through the speakers at the same time, it's like, maybe get somebody else to help out, So.
Pros and cons. Sometimes the big band is a good thing. I remember seeing the Killers a couple of years ago. There's 4 people in the Killers. There was 5 sidemen on the stage, including the backing vocals. And I thought that was a musical crime against humanity to do that. When the band live has a percussionist and the percussionist doesn't sing, they're just a percussionist. Musical crime against humanity that they have.
Yeah, how much do you really need a percussionist? I mean, anyway.
Yeah. Where are those bongo solos in what are the hit songs again? Selling the Drama, I Alone.
Yeah. A Pain Lies on the Riverside.
Okay, that one has bongos, but I don't think
does it? Oh, you're right, it does. Has some kind of
I don't think Lakini's Juice has a bongo solo. And so I just don't like extra sidemen if they're not necessarily a singer or they're not adding anything to the equation. So Phil X, going back to what we were talking about, he's awesome. I love the video of him playing Hot for Teacher with Ray Luzier at a barbecue or something.
Oh, I gotta look that up.
Party. Yeah, I mean, they keep Van Halen's legacy alive better than Van Halen or David Lee Roth is keeping it alive. So I think that, being totally serious here, because of Van Halen News Desk, because of podcasters like you, because of books like this and Michael Christopher's book and Greg Renoff's book, that's all keeping Van Halen alive. Mm-hmm. And if we don't all do this, we're going to think of Van Halen like we do Grand Funk Railroad or Creedence Clearwater Revisited, where there are these legendary bands, but the infighting killed the legacy and it died, and you don't think that they were big. And then meanwhile, we think that Motley Crue was the biggest band ever because of how many T-shirts they have at Hot Topic.
That's a really interesting take. I like that.
Well, that's just kind of where I'm at. And these Dave things against Wolfie, these Dave things against Ed, they hurt me because they're diminishing the little that we have left of Van Halen with infighting instead of celebration. So he spends his time on that instead of a tribute show, instead of opening up the vaults. He spends more time dancing in overalls to crap than this. And that's what makes it hard to be a Van Halen fan. And that's why Kiss is doing everything better to bring it full circle.
Well, for me, it's for one, I really I do think some of these bands need to be a little bit. I wish they would take their legacy as serious as some of their fan bases do. But on the other hand, it's show material for our show. So yeah, you got to keep it back and forth. Well, Darren, I really appreciated this. It was nice meeting you. Love the book. I recommend it to anybody that, someone like me, that I can read almost any rock biography about bands of my personal interest. But definitely, if you're a Van Halen fan, I put this up there with the Greg Renoff book. Something that you definitely need to check out and have in your collection. Any last words for the kids?
Did you know that was my old sign-off question?
I did. I read it in the book. That's why I put it on here.
Yeah, you did your homework right there. I don't think most people realize that. The bottom line is, thank you for the very kind words, and thank you for having me on this show. It's a pleasure to reach the diehards, but to what you do, thank you, because you're keeping our favorite bands alive, even if it's through Michael Sweet quotes.
Yeah, you did some of your own research too. Oh man, well, this has been a lot of fun, Darren. All the best.